Welcome to the Wealthy SAP Consultant Podcast with your host, Anita Anello, where we empower SAP consultants to deliver premium services by showcasing their expertise to the world. In each episode, we dive deep into strategies, tips, and success stories to help SAP consultants like you elevate your consultancy game, attract high-paying clients, and maximize your revenue potential. Get ready to unlock the secrets to success in the SAP consulting world and position yourself as a top-tier consultant. To connect further and explore personalized strategies for your consulting business, schedule a strategy call with our team by clicking the link below. Enjoy the show. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Wealthy SAP Consultant Podcast. My name is Anita Anello, and I am your host. And today, I am joined by my new best friend, Judith O'Callahan. And Judith and I actually, it's so fun when you podcast, you guys, because she and I met just even a couple of weeks ago, but we have this connection already based on our shared experience around the SAP world and projects and all sorts of stuff that we're going to unpack for you today. But this lady, you guys, she is fire of understanding her business, her specific area of expertise. And she and I are going to have a great conversation that's going to set some people free as we get going today. So Judith, thank you so much for being here. I just want to honor you and who you are, who God's made you to be, and what you're bringing to the marketplace today. Thank you so much for being here with me to have a little chat today.
Thank you so much, Anita. And it has been an absolute pleasure. And I adore everything that you do. So just about me for the audience. So I have been in SAP transformation for over 2 decades. So I've had the privilege of working in 3 continents. So this has been an amazing experience. Currently, I'm based in Brisbane, Australia. And together with Anita and the likes of many people in our collective, we are changing the world. So that is what I love about what we do. So here we are.
Oh my gosh, you guys, this conversation today is going to be total fire. So get ready. It's going to be amazing. So Judith, let's talk a little bit. Let's chit chat about a couple of things. I know you have some amazing things going on. We'll actually mention those at the tail end of the podcast episode, but what do we want to talk about today? Let's go.
Absolutely. Let's get started, right? So about you. What inspired you to get started? So for me, that's a fascinating story. So I'm sure it'll amaze the audience as well. So in your case, what made you get started and what's the root cause of this inspiration?
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much for asking. So I spent about 10 years of my career at SAP working for SAP directly. At that time, I was head of professional services for one of the product lines, and my team in a 10-year span, we handled 10,000 implementations of SAP products and worked through the channel, did all sorts of amazing stuff. During that time, I say I kind of like backed into some escalation work because a VP that I reported to and a senior VP kind of said, Anita, you have this interesting knack for having tough conversations with people, delivering the truth, but also helping them walk through and figure out a solution on the other side. So they said, hey, we have this problem project that's pretty close to you. I was living on the East Coast at that time. And they said, it's pretty close to you. Would you consider going and driving over and chit-chatting with this customer and their business partner, their channel partner, because they're on the verge of a multi-million-dollar lawsuit? And I was like, sure, I'll go give it a shot. I don't know. So I go and meet with this client, and I just did what I do naturally. And I walked out of there and I called my VP afterwards, and he said, Anita, how'd it go? Are we in the middle of a lawsuit or what? And I was like, nope, everybody's fine. I think I said something super nonchalant, like, nope, everybody's fine. The project is moving forward. And here's here's the next steps. And he was like, what? Like, how is that possible? Okay, so I'll come back to that in just a couple of minutes. So I had a great career with SAP. I loved it. At the tail end, it was really what was happening for me. Anybody who's listening today, you know me, you know how my podcast works. I'm going to put stuff in the framework of what God's doing in my life. If that's not your perspective on life, don't sweat it. This is just the way that I view the world and life. So God put on my heart to be able to stay home with our kids and homeschool full time. So I left SAP and did that for a number of years. We're still a homeschooling family. But about 6 years ago, what was interesting, Judith, is I had kind of like a stirring inside of me. So I started dabbling around in the entrepreneurial world. I had owned a software business before. I didn't miss like the 80-hour work weeks. I didn't miss the heavy travel. I didn't miss some of those things. I still wanted to be a very intentional parent and wife and mother. But I started dabbling in some of these different businesses. And then just kind of skipping ahead, about 2.5 years ago, we had an interesting thing happen in our household. Um, our marriage was going okay. We were kind of on a little bit of a rocky path for a bit. And then my husband went in for an outpatient procedure. I don't know if you've even heard all this yet. Um, and he ended up in the emergency room and spent a week in the cardiac wing, like by surprise.
Yeah.
So
Mm.
outpatient procedure, I'll see you in a couple hours to, uh-oh, what's going on? While my husband was in the hospital, he lost his job. And I remember talking to his business partner on the phone thinking, oh my gosh, God, what are we going to do? And at that time, driving back and forth from the hospital back to the kids, and I would come home and put on like my mom face and be like, everything's gonna be okay. We got this, right? Like you can tell, even my voice right now kind of like goes up a couple of notches because it's still real like raw in some cases.
Mm.
And that there was one night in particular where I walked into our bedroom and I lost it. I just
Mm.
broke down in tears. I was on my face in tears and prayer. And I was like calling out to God, like, what are you going to do in the midst of that? What are we going to do? What's going to happen to our household? And wrestled. This is the way I describe sometimes my relationship with God. I wrestled with God like all night long. In the morning, I remember talking to a close friend of mine in the morning. We had a quick conversation and she was super encouraging, but she prayed with me and we started declaring, God, no matter what, everything's going to be okay. We kind of went off like a little bit of in my mind, it always looks like a checklist, although there was no written words. It just was kind of like, we're going to pray that, my husband's going to be okay. The kids are going to be okay. That kind of a prayer. So I remember walking out of my bathroom, going over to the kitchen, and in that time frame, Judith, I made a decision. I was like, no matter what, we're going to be okay. And then I started calling some friends of mine. I started networking around a little bit in the SAP space because I had been in there for so long. I connected with people that I've known for more than 20 years, applied for a couple of jobs, but I was pretty nervous about that. And then a client came up to go back and do some of this escalation work. And I started stepping into some of these projects again where I was like, this is my sweet spot. I love these kinds of projects. If you have a project that's like, I'll just say, way over budget, like hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars, way behind schedule. So not just a couple of days, like weeks, months, years, and then on the verge of lawsuit, like that's my sweet spot. I love helping clients in those scenarios, not because I love where they are, but because I know that I know that I know that I can
Yeah.
rescue those kinds of projects and help them get back on track and get live. So I started taking clients and having conversations around those kinds of projects, and our household flourished. In the midst of what seemed like
Yeah.
some of the hardest season of our marriage, my husband's health, our household, we were actually flourishing and just in every way, shape, and form. And so it really was a gift in our household to step back into work that I loved in a way that the schedule suited our household and provided for us financially in amazing ways and allowed my husband to really go through the healing process that he needed to do, which I mean, that was like the next 18 months of life for us.
And this is kind of amazing, right? So thank you for being vulnerable and sharing it with us and to everyone else listening to this one today and beyond. And what I believe is it's in the moment of brokenness
Mm.
that God inspires and does something beautiful through us
Yeah.
that we never thought we could do before. So that's one thing. So if anyone listening to it, if you're navigating a space wherein you do not know what to do,
Mhm.
That is okay. Declare God's grace on you, and God will get you through. So I've been there, Anita. Your experience is, it's so touching. It's so amazing. And thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
And also, brokenness enables us to understand things that are broken in the world. So SAP programs are not easy. Like you and I have done a lot. And especially when things go wrong, which seems to be a lot, whether you read Gartner or McKinsey, it's 70 or 80%, a lot of things go wrong.
Yeah.
So weeks or months or days is bleeding money. It's
Mm.
bleeding time. And it's also a lot of disruption to many businesses. Like, sustaining an SAP program in any business is not easy. So it's like one of my clients told me it's like having a lung surgery and heart surgery at the same time without an anesthesia. It's a lot. So it is a lot. So clients going through this situation, that is where your sweet spot is, and that is where you come in like an angel to help. So one of the things that I can totally see is that you're so empathetic. And first point of call is you're empathetic and you understand the clients and meet them where they are. So tell us about your approach on how you navigate this. You've got a beautiful formula, the
Yeah.
de-escalation breakthrough, and that itself is amazing for me. So talk us more about it.
Yeah, one thing that I noticed is as I've stepped into the entrepreneurial role and being a business owner, I know what it's like for a client who's bleeding out money, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars every day as they wait for their SAP project to go live. I know from my own business what it's like to be in those financial situations. And so I know how important it is to get them back on track as quickly as possible. So we do a couple of things. I go in with my team and we really assess the situation and really kind of acknowledge where we are in the project, why we're at that spot. There are a lot of elements that are included in these kinds of projects. Some there's usually, and I honor both sides. I honor all of our SAP clients as I'm talking about this and all of our SAP channel partners. I just want to be super clear on that because both sides of any escalation are involved in that. And so we really start going in and assessing going on. Where are the gaps? What's gone wrong in your mind, Mr. Client, so far? And then what do we see as the path to be able to go forward? I have this wacky, wild, amazing, um, based on wisdom ability to be able to hear somebody's problem and in my mind, in just a couple of seconds, see the end result that they want to get and then map out a project plan like in minutes. And so as I'm listening and taking stock on what's happening, how they got to the place where they were, understanding, all the technical elements that are there, the project plan elements, the timing elements, the money elements, and then also the people elements. That's a big thing. So as an executive coach in these environments, I'm able to go in and talk to the presidents, to the C-level executives. Those guys are my sweet spot in terms of like the perfect fit client for me to be working with. So business owner to business owner, we're able to have these conversations and say, okay, I see this is what's going on, and here's the plan to be able to execute to get you live. Now, one thing's really interesting, Judith, is that while SAP projects are challenging, we're often asking our clients, do your normal, we'll just call it, pretend, do your normal 40-hour week job. And then, by the way, take on this part-time job that's 20 to 40 hours more a week and implement a brand new ERP solution. And that's hard. It's stressful. It's painful. A lot of people, especially at the client organization, they are afraid. They have a either spoken or unspoken fear they might lose their job in the midst of that, especially when I come into a project that's in this escalation status. There's a lot of fear. Somebody's going to get fired.
Anxiety.
Somebody's not going to have a job after they go live. So the people element for me is actually really where my heart goes out because I love studying different personality styles, how people communicate based on their personality styles, and then being able to hear sometimes what's being said and then also underneath that what's not being said and kind of pull that apart and then help, it's what I call like translate it back to each party so that they can start communicating again and start getting back on track together again.
And this again is beautiful, right? So what I can see is like a beautiful tapestry that's coming together. So there are threads going everywhere and colors going everywhere. So it's the ability to be able to see the design, the ability to visualize it and bring the whole thing together. So to be able to work and two things that you've said actually resonate with me. Sometimes we miss what is not said,
Mm,
and that speaks volumes. And
yeah.
those who work with people, and many of the neuroscientists listening to this would agree with that as well. So it's the mirror neurons that do a great job in communication. And also, 90% of what is not said says volumes that would have the answer to wherever that is needed. So, Anita, having that ability to be able to unearth this is God given, and it's something unique that you bring into the world to be able to see those escalations. And in many cases you manage escalations or problems that has not even come to the surface. So by having you, the clients, addressing 90% of, 90% of what they cannot see,
Yeah.
am I right in saying
Yeah.
that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. The other thing that's really interesting in these projects is a lot of times I always use the name Susie Bell. I don't know why. That just like it's like the fictitious name of Susie Bell. So let's say there's somebody in the organization named Susie Bell, and 20 years ago, she decided she thought it was a great idea at the time to be able to like define a business process. And then that's how she does her role. Well, the thing about when you're implementing SAP, that's a software based on best practices. Sometimes what we find in those projects is Susie Bell's business process may have worked and served the business 20 years ago, but it does not, it no longer serves the business to help them to be the most profitable they can, to be the most efficient that they can, to serve their customers the best way. And so a lot of times it's unraveling those business processes. Now, in and of itself, Judith, like a business process, it's just steps one, two, three, four, five. It doesn't really matter. But what happens is a lot of times people attach emotions to the business process, or they have a thought process that says we have to do it this way because we perceive it to be a competitive advantage. We perceive it to be the only way to do it. We perceive it to be the right way. And so sometimes, as you can see, like the head and heart element of unraveling in that and walking somebody through the process. So, this is why I say a lot of times it is actually pretty simple what I do, but it is not easy.
Easy.
It
Oh
is
yeah.
not easy
It's
to
not
unravel
easy.
these kinds of situations. It is not easy to forgive and put that mistrust down that a
Mm,
client might have with their channel partner or the specific consultant or whatever. If they're getting to this level of these projects, they are often there because there's a lot of mistrust. There's a lot of things that have gone wrong. It's not a vanilla install. There's probably a heavy customization in the mix. There's probably personality styles that naturally some personality styles are more combative with one another. And you're kind of like, how do we? And then these people are forced to work with one another in the midst of a project. And they're kind of like, I didn't decide on
but
the solution. And now I got to work with this person over here who I do not love. You know what I mean? Right. And so it's being able to see all those elements and then help people shift their perspective so that they can walk forward together. Because typically, when the decision was made to go with SAP as the right solution, that was made way high up in the food chain,
yeah.
right? And then somebody along the way down below will just say in an org chart, I don't mean a person that's less than, I mean like in an organizational structure, those folks are having some of the hardest time. And so we really want to be able to like pick them up, help them know that somebody's on their side. Oftentimes the clients don't necessarily, they either don't have a qualified um, like senior level project manager. Now, I don't want to confuse what I do with just project management because
Project
that's
management.
not what people pay me for at all.
Yeah.
Um, but they don't feel like they have an advocate that's on their side, that's really understands businesses, understands the gaps, understands ERP implementations. They don't have like that's not what makes them good in their organization. And so can you see how having an advocate on their side at the client side is like, oh, I feel like somebody's finally my cheerleader. Somebody's finally like vying for me. Many times they don't feel like they're getting that championship and that kind of a support from the channel partner. Not because the channel partner doesn't do it or can't do it or doesn't try to do it. It's just sometimes there's that mismatch.
And this is, again, very interesting, right? Let's dissect this. So let's talk about the CIOs or about like the people who actually make the decision. In many cases, when we get involved in escalation situations, the people who made the decisions are not necessarily the leadership team who are continuing with it. They have inherited, in many cases, a beast, a something they don't know, and it's like adopting a baby that they had no idea of. So they are navigating a very tough time. So that leadership team is going through a challenge, and the middle layer who is getting heat from the everyone who was working for them to a leadership team who's asking, it's just a software, it can't be that hard, so what's keeping you so long? That type of conversations that they're dealing with day in and day out. And the folks who are on the ground doing it, it's like, why do we need a new software? Everything was working in this organization, and because of this software, I'm doing another 60 hours in the week for which I'm getting not paid for, and at the end of it, I don't know if I have a job at the end. So all this nervousness is going on at different levels in the organization. Plus, as an organization, they may be having challenges with share prices or stakeholders asking them, what's going on? Why can't you get things in order and keep us moving? Like, what's our profitability? All those very important conversations that are important for the business. So having you or having you as a liaison or someone on their side who is helping each level navigate things. And people are the most important asset, right? So people, process, and technology. So let's take care of the people, and rest of it becomes easier as
Yeah.
we work through people.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I'm just thinking that you can walk into a boardroom or be on a Zoom call in
Yeah.
any of these kinds of scenarios,
Yeah.
and the tension level is like, I don't know. I have friends,
Ooh.
she'll say like it's level 9,000. It is, it's intense,
Yeah.
right? Sometimes it's kind of interesting too, is that there often is somebody who's a little bit of a saboteur in these
Oh,
kinds
yeah.
of projects, right? Because remember what we said earlier, the mere idea of implementing a new piece of software in your business is actually very straightforward. That's why I call it simple. It is
Yeah.
not easy,
Easy.
right? So sometimes my job is to be able to like ferret out who's the one that's the saboteur. I recently finished a big project that it was interesting. I had an inkling as to who the couple people were that were the saboteurs, and then I was I'm not normally nervous, but I was nervous to get on the call with the president at that time and have this chat with him. And it's so interesting. He was kind of like, "Okay, Anita, what did you find out?" And I was like, "Well, and I kind of started to like tiptoe into the conversation. Again, my personality style is very direct.
Yeah.
And he was kind of like, Anita, just spit it out already. And I was like,
Yeah.
well, I think there might be this person, this person, this person. I kind of identified a couple people on the
Yeah.
team. He dove right in. He's like, oh, yes, this one person. Oh my gosh. And then blah, 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 blah. Like I got the whole backstory. And I'd kind of been and then their situation there were a lot of other people and a lot of other political situations, a lot of tangled
Yeah.
mess that had gone on because they were so far behind. Um, but it was really just fascinating to me. Now, I am not the kind of person that would say, let me identify somebody so they can like lose their job.
Oh,
I
no.
do not like that at all. I don't want to have anything to do with that.
That doesn't help
But
anyway. So to
no,
the whole.
can we just acknowledge sometimes
Yeah.
sometimes that is
Yeah.
the solution, right?
Oh,
Is
yeah.
sometimes it's my job as a de-escalation expert to come in and go to a president or a C-level executive and say, this is what my findings tell me.
Yeah.
Here's your options, but you guys ultimately make the decision on what's the right thing for your business. Because let's just say, practically, tactically, for any company that's out there that's in the middle of an escalation, ultimately it's your job, your responsibility, your right to decide how do you want things done in the project? What do you want it to look like? What's the timeline look like? In some cases, what do you want the budget to look like? Like those decisions, and then identifying which business processes can stay, have to stay,
Mhm.
which business processes can we improve by just going through the normal everyday step-by-step process that
Yeah.
SAP is expecting us to do, right? Because SAP can be considered, and there's lots of different products in the
Mm.
SAP family. It can be considered kind of like a rigid product. I
Yeah.
don't ever look at it that way. What I love about an SAP implementation on every single level is because we have defined best practices, business processes. The idea is that we can't have any one person come in and break those business processes. That's why you'll see SAP implemented at your billion-dollar level organizations all the way down to multi-million dollar organizations in the supply chain, because no one person or entity can like break the business
Yeah.
process, and that's supply chain along the way.
There's a lot of resilience
Yes.
built in that practice, and sometimes rigidity in this case, and like we rely on structures to help our life, right? So, and it apply the same principle if you're listening as an audience. Like, why is it seem so rigid? Because it's that structures sometimes help us streamline our lives, and that's very similar in processes or technology or anything. Not
Right.
necessarily in SAP. In many ERPs, there
Mhm.
is processes for a reason. It's
Right.
done certain way for that reason. So keep an
Absolutely.
open
Absolutely.
mind. Yeah.
Yeah, and we can apply that same logic to an Oracle implementation, a
Yeah.
Microsoft implementation, like all of them. They all work the same thing. The reason that they're experts in their space is because they have solid business practices that'll make companies multi-millions and billions of dollars. Right. And so, yeah, that's one of those things where like, yes, we want that in our business, even if I personally, as the user, might not like it at the time. But then
Yeah.
when I
Exactly.
see how just the slightest little bit shift of a perspective can change your whole outcome. And what I love to do is kind of help people. It's like I open their eyes and they can't unsee stuff anymore, or we open their ears and they can't unhear any longer of like, oh gosh. You know what, Anita? You're right. We do need to do these things a little bit better, more efficient, so we can. I mean, I have companies that are multi-million dollar companies, $100 million and above, all that kind of stuff. These guys are doing, hundreds and thousands of transactions every day, and let's set them up for success so they can go double their business in the next 2 to 5 years and keep up with competitors that we know that are doing volumes of business like an Amazon or whatever, right? Or Wayfair or Overstock. Like, let's help these customers go and like live out their dreams to serve their customers as quickly and as best as we possibly can.
Okay. And thank you for that. And for customers listening, or customers, clients, prospects, anyone listening to this, it's very, very simple. We know transformations are tough and
Yeah.
it's not easy. So if your transformation is in trouble, do not hesitate to call Anita. It's kind of very simple. So what Anita does is also very simple, not easy.
Mhm.
First things first, manage the disruption to your business, contain it, and also solve it as soon as possible so you can do what you do best.
Yeah.
That is, your business is serving your stakeholders, whoever you're born to serve. So focus on that. And when you have a problem, you know who to ring. So, and if you're like me and you go, how do I set myself up for success? Again, that's something you ask someone who has seen many things, who has been through a lot of trouble. So call Anita. So very, very simple. It's one-stop shop
Yeah.
when you know you need advice. There
Yeah.
you go. So now, Anita, how can clients contact you?
Oh my gosh, Judith, thank you so much for asking that question. I love that. So you can hit me up on LinkedIn, and that's probably one of the easiest places we can book a call and just kind of start having a conversation and see where you're at in your project. And I'll make sure and drop a link in the show notes as well. But one of the things that I love to do is just talk with people and see where they're at and see if it's a good fit. Sometimes projects are a great fit for me. Sometimes they're not. Either way is totally okay. We'll walk through the entire system. I know we just barely kind of scratched the surface on the system that I use that is proven over hundreds and hundreds of escalations over 21 years of doing this kind of work. So we just start with a conversation and see where you're at, see if it's something that I can do to help you. And yeah, we love to be able to
Yeah.
support you any way we can, no matter what. Know that when you're talking to consultants, channel partners, even SAP, even when it doesn't feel like it, I will say, know that the vast majority of consultants, channel partners, 100% SAP folks, they're for you. And they're for helping you go through the transformation, go through it, not stay in it, but go through it
Yes, go
so that
through
you
it.
can get back to the business of increasing your profits, increasing your revenues, serving your customers. I like to call it at the Ritz-Carlton level of service, 5-star, whatever your definition of is serving your clients at the highest level possible. That's what we're all here for, is not to stay in the midst of your projects forever. No good consultant wants to do that, by the way. We want to be
Yeah.
able to jump in, help you where our expertise lies, and then pull out so that you
You
can go
know.
do the things that you're called to do in your business. So notice the language that both Judith and I are using as we talk through this conversation about transformation and these escalation projects. If you notice, our heart is in a spot of servitude and servanthood that says, I want to be able to help you get the outcome that you're looking for. And then by the way, we'll be compensated along the way. That's kind of how it works. So
That is that is how it is. And I am sure many of you would be reaching out to Anita and talk to us anytime, talk to Anita anytime. Our job is to make your transformation simple, successful, so you can be on the road as soon as possible. So whenever you want to think of transformation, talk to Anita. Thank you.
Judith, thank you so much for being with me here today. I so appreciate you. I just want to honor you and the work that you're doing through global ERP, like the transformation that you're helping those clients that are stuck in those ECC projects and then moving forward over to the next level of SAP projects, whether that's Rise or Grow. Like, I just want to champion you and cheerlead you on because the work that you do is making a difference in thousands of SAP customers. So thank you so much for being here with me today and having this great conversation. And thank you for the work that you're bringing to the marketplace.
Oh, thank you so much. And from Global ERP and many of us, we believe in setting up clients for success. So what we undertake is called a Phase Zero service, which looks at 5 elements and gives you a recipe that you can work out and set yourself up for success. So you can save time, money, and most importantly, avoid getting into tricky situations. So Anita and I are there to talk if needed. So here we go.
Awesome. Thanks, Judith. Thanks for being here today. And everybody will be wrapping up the podcast for today, but join us again for another episode of The Wealthy SAP Consultant. Well, that's a wrap for today's episode of the Wealthy SAP Consultant podcast with your host, Anita Anello. We hope you gained valuable insights and strategies to take your consulting business to new heights. Remember, by showcasing your expertise and delivering premium services, you can attract high-paying clients and increase your revenues while serving your customers at the highest levels. To dive deeper into implementing these strategies and overcoming challenges in your consulting journey, schedule a strategy call with our team by clicking on the link below. Stay tuned for our next episode where we'll continue to provide you with actionable tips and advice to excel in the SAP consulting industry. Thank you for tuning in, and until next time, keep shining in your consulting business.